So, I have this story that still makes me cringe whenever I think about it. It's about the exact moment I realized how disastrous one tiny misclick on my phone could be. Picture this. I'm sitting at my desk, balancing a lukewarm cup of coffee in one hand and my phone in the other, scrolling through messages. I'm chatting with my best friend. Nothing too serious, just us exchanging the usual sarcastic banter about weekend plans and how we both kinda dread adulting. Now, here's where things go south. I meant to send a text to my best friend, something completely inappropriate for work, if you catch my drift. I hit send without a second thought, but guess who it actually went to? My boss, Karen. Yes, my boss. The one who's probably the most professional human being I've ever met, sitting right upstairs in her office. At first, I didn't even realize what had happened. I'm happily typing away, sipping my coffee, when my phone buzzes with a notification. It's from Karen. And that's when the sinking feeling hit me. Imagine a message filled with jokes about ducking meetings, sarcastic remarks about existential dread at work, and a rather unflattering joke about office politics. All things perfectly fine if said to your best friend, but horrifying if your boss reads them. I sat frozen, staring at the screen, heart pounding, eyes wide enough to give a squirrel a run for its money. What was I supposed to do now? Was it possible to unsend a text on regular messaging apps? No. Could I pretend it was a weird autocorrect error? Maybe, but would she buy it? The office environment instantly felt like it was shrinking around me. I tried to summon some semblance of calm, but honestly, my brain was doing cartwheels. Here I am, at my desk, with potentially career-altering text bubbles staring back at me from my phone screen. I stared down at my keyboard, nervously tapping out a half-formed apology that felt too late to be of any use. The longer I waited for Karen's reply, the more my mind spiraled into ways I might avoid walking past her office ever again. Every little noise in the office suddenly sounded like people whispering about me, and I'm pretty sure my face was bright enough to be spotted from space. Friends, this was one of those moments where you swear your life is comedy, but the punchline is misery wrapped in embarrassment. So that's where I was stuck in a silent panic, convinced I'd just texted my professional doom, completely frozen, convinced there was no going back. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. Every day at the office was a careful balancing act for me, like walking a tightrope that somehow also involved spreadsheets, emails, and an endless parade of coffee cups. By the time I rolled into work, usually a few minutes late, but within the grace period, the rhythm was pretty predictable. Karen, my boss, was the kind of leader who commanded respect without shouting. Her presence was like an unspoken rule that said, I mean business, but I'm approachable-ish. She had this slightly intimidating aura mixed with a surprising sense of humor that came out only when the right moment struck, which wasn't often. My relationship with Karen was professional but cordial. I admired her efficiency, though that also made me nervous when texting her outside work hours, which I tried to avoid like the plague. Karen was clear about boundaries. Work emails were for work. Texts were if and only if what you were saying urgently deserved it. And even then, it felt strange sending her messages on my phone. There's a whole psychological thing about mixing contacts in your phone, where your best friend's name sits right above your boss's and your thumb just forgets. Honestly, the way phones are designed doesn't help. The screen is small, your fingers get clumsy, and there's this ever-present risk of hitting the wrong name without noticing. I'd always told myself to double-check before hitting send, but that day my brain clearly clocked out. Then there's Sam. Sam. If I could sum him up in 3 words, office fixture, walking meme, and part-time therapist. He's the kind of coworker who thrives on a little chaos around the water cooler and is somehow always around when something awkward happens. And no, I'm not saying he's a troublemaker, okay, maybe a little. But Sam had witnessed my phone meltdown and part of Karen's baffled reaction when she read that infamous text. Which meant one thing, either he would be my saving grace or the ultimate aggravator. The stakes for me felt massive. My job wasn't just another paycheck, it was the thing keeping me afloat in this mid-sized city where the rent doggedly ignored inflation. I liked what I did enough to want to prove myself, but in moments like these that gets buried under a mountain of panic, sending an inappropriate text to Karen wasn't just embarrassing, it felt like I'd accidentally thrown a grenade into my own career sandbox. Everyone else around me seemed to move through their day oblivious to the brewing storm in my chest. I watched the clock compulsively. Minutes ticked by, and the office started to feel smaller, like the walls were inching closer, the hum of printers and tapping keyboards somehow louder now. Karen's professionalism was legendary, but I pictured her reading my blundered message, the corners of her mouth twitching in disbelief or worse, judgment. Was she silently drafting a formal reprimand? Or just shaking her head, wondering how I could possibly handle a simple texting app? I wasn't sure which scared me more. Meanwhile, Sam cornered me during a quiet moment, leaning casually against the cubicle wall with a smirk that could have been reassuring if it weren't so mischievous. So, heard you dropped a text grenade, he said, clearly holding back laughter. Before I could respond, he added, "Don't worry. Worst case, we start a betting pool on how long it takes before she calls you in." His unexpected laughter broke the tension a bit, but also reminded me how thin the divide was between minor embarrassment and full-blown disaster. The day stretched on, filled with stolen glances at my phone and awkward attempts to focus on work. Karen was in her office, presumably avoiding eye contact, but the uncertainty gnawed at me. The strangest part was realizing how a simple thumb misstep could feel like throwing your entire professional life into limbo. My usual confidence felt fractured, replaced by a mounting dread that this miscommunication might change everything. And just when I thought I could ride this wave and hope Karen forgot about the whole thing, yeah, you guessed it, that's when my phone buzzed again. Texting blunders aren't just about the message, right? They're about timing, context, and whatever mood you were in when your brain was apparently taking a coffee break. So, when my phone buzzed again, I knew I was about to find out just how deep this particular rabbit hole went. Karen's reply popped up on the screen, and at first, I just stared. It was a strange mix of confusion and something that felt curiously like humor. She wrote, "Are you secretly a stand-up comedian or just living some kind of wild double life I don't know about?" Then there was an emoji, a winking face, and honestly, I had no idea if I should feel relieved or more terrified. Trying to salvage this felt like trying to untangle a spaghetti mess with two chopsticks. I frantically typed back something that sounded silly enough to lighten the mood, but not so silly that it screamed, "Panic attack in progress." I hit send and immediately wished my message would dissolve into digital oblivion. That's when Sam swooped in, like some kind of office superhero or maybe just the flavor of the week troublemaker. I found him by the coffee machine, stirring his cup and grinning like he was about to impart some life-saving wisdom. "All right, Spill, what's your plan?" Because honestly, if it was me, I'd be crafting a 10-page apology letter right about now. He shook his head, but with that trademark smirk that somehow made everything seem less grim. I explained Karen's response and my attempt at a joke that probably landed somewhere between awkward and desperate. "Okay, that's actually kind of perfect," Sam said, eyes bright. "Karen's got humor, use that." Reply with something like, "Clearly, I'm hiding my true talents." Should I start a side hustle as an office comedian? For a moment, I considered it. Could humor really fix this? Could I laugh off a text so cringe-worthy it could be framed in the Hall of Shame for office blunders? But then reality hit. Sam's suggestion felt risky. What if Karen thought I was making light of the situation rather than owning up to it? What if her humor was sarcasm in disguise, the kind that bites? I spent the next hour hovering somewhere between the printer and my desk, half listening to office chatter that began to swirl around my little catastrophe like a cyclone. There were whispers, or at least I thought I heard whispers, about the text drama and the boss emailing instead of you. Oh, and the occasional glance Sam threw my way like, "See, I told you this would be entertaining." Every trip to the kitchen or bathroom now felt like walking through a gauntlet where everyone knew my name and my texting fail. The thought of facing Karen each day felt, surgically daunting. Then came that moment. The one I'd been both dreading and somehow expecting. Karen's office door swung open and she called my name with that no-nonsense tone that shut down small talk faster than you can say awkward. My heart did the weird flip-flop thing. I walked over, trying to look calm while my insides were doing the full samba. "I think we need to talk," she said, stepping aside for me to enter. And just like that, the text mishap wasn't just a funny or horrifying story anymore. It was real. It was happening. And whatever was about to unfold next, I knew it was going to be a turning point. Sitting across from Karen in her office, I braced myself for the worst. You know that moment when your body tenses up, your mind races, and all you can think is, well, this is it. But then Karen surprised me. She leaned back in her chair and let out this soft chuckle. Not a gasp or a reprimand, just a genuine laugh that made the tension in the room ease up a notch. "You know, I thought the text was some kind of joke at first," she said. "I mean, I don't get many messages that make me wonder if my employees are secretly moonlighting as comedians." I blinked, caught off guard. Yeah, it was definitely not meant for you. I'm so sorry. I was just messing around with my friend and didn't realize who I was texting." Karen smiled, and it wasn't the tight, "let's remain professional" smile that I'd expected. It was more understanding, almost amused. "Look, everyone has moments where their thumbs betray them. Honestly, it reminded me that you're human, not just a robot who churns out spreadsheets and emails." Her words hit me in this weird, unexpected way. I'd been picturing judgment, maybe even a meeting with HR. Instead, I was getting grace. She went on to say she appreciated the honesty, and that while she emphasized keeping work and personal stuff separate, accidents happen, and it's better to be upfront about them rather than hide in embarrassment. I realized then that the whole texting disaster had actually opened a door for more honest communication between us. In a way, the boundaries Karen set weren't just about keeping things strictly professional, they were about respect, clarity, and trust. And she was reminding me that those boundaries didn't make us less human or less connected, they just helped us navigate this weird dance called office life. We even managed to laugh about some of the more ridiculous parts of that ill-fated text, turning the cringe into a shared joke that mangled the initial awkwardness into something a little lighter. She said, "Just maybe next time, double-check your recipients before confessing your hatred for meetings." I nodded, silently vowing to never trust autocorrect or my own distracted thumbs. Again. Walking back to my desk, I felt this strange mix of relief and renewed respect, not just for Karen, but for how we juggle professionalism and personality. The incident had, oddly enough, humanized our dynamic in a way that nothing else could have. Of course, the office still buzzed with whispers and sideways glances, and Sam's ongoing commentary didn't exactly help me forget. But facing Karen after all that was less terrifying than I had imagined. It made me wonder how many of us have survived, maybe even quietly thrived, through those embarrassing digital slip-ups. And how often do those mistakes, as mortifying as they feel in the moment, lead to moments of unexpected connection and understanding? I guess the real takeaway is that none of us are perfect. We all trip over tiny mishaps that feel like career earthquakes, but with a little honesty and a good dose of humor can sometimes become the stories we laugh about later, telling ourselves that, yeah, maybe adulting is messy, but at least it's never boring.